Okay, so all being well, we are now recording this webinar and streaming live on Facebook. So welcome to those watching the recording again, and welcome to those joining us on Facebook, and welcome again to the lovely people joining us on Zoom. I see that, yeah, we've had some comments from where people are joining us from this evening on Zoom. Yeah, brilliant. Ryan's just cooking a chili before heading off to the allotment. Sounds beautiful in this summer weather. So as I say, we're at the Your Wellbeing, Your Community, Our World free webinar this evening. We're just welcoming people joining us on Zoom as well as Facebook and watching the recording again. Nicola is joining us from Bristol. Lovely that you're joining tonight, Nicola. So the purpose of tonight's webinar, we've been running a series of webinars here at the Network of Wellbeing to really create a sense of sharing what's going on in the world of wellbeing, different projects and organisations that are doing really exciting stuff to support personal wellbeing, but also this sense of kind of wider collective societal wellbeing in harmony with each other and in harmony with nature as well. And we thought, since we've been doing that for about 6 months now is a nice chance to kind of share a little bit about the Network of Wellbeing and the idea behind why we see wellbeing as an important frame, and also to hear a bit more from some of you guys, that have been joining us a bit on this journey so far, and looking at where we're going to go next. So that's why Roger Higman, the Director of the Network of Wellbeing, is the speaker on this evening's webinar. I'm Flo Shalom, I'm the Communications Manager at the Network of Wellbeing. So to start off with, we're just going to have a few questions and answers with Roger, and then, like I say, we'll definitely move on to a much more interactive section of the webinar later. And maybe, Roger, you could just introduce yourself and a bit about why you got excited and involved in the world of wellbeing.
Okay, it's a long story, or it could be a long story, and I don't think we've got huge amounts of time, so I won't go into it in too much detail. I think suffice to say, firstly, I say hi to everybody. I think I said hi on the chat box, but hi to everybody. Very much welcoming you all here. Very pleased to hear from you all and see you all on the webinar. For me, I guess it's about not being as happy as I might have been, you know. And I can think back to a time when I was living in London. I used to work for Friends of the Earth. I think you know this, Flo. But I spent a lot of time working for Friends of the Earth, and I was living in London. And I just wasn't as happy as I could have been. And I began to explore, why is that? What's got going on? I started to do things about it. Silly things. I mean, the culture of the organization I work for, like many NGOs, and I think there's some people from NGOs around here, was very much geared around socializing in the pub. And that wasn't very good for my waistline. And I also felt I wanted to do something different. And so I set up a little walking group, and we had groups of people. And we went off on the train, and we walked for maybe 15 miles, had lunch, and then had lunch on the way, by the way. We weren't that quick. And then went back home again. And what I found is it was a completely different way of socializing, that people were really friendly, people were getting on with each other a lot more. And it was really infectious, and lots of people started to join in. And that got me interested in the whole thing about, well, sort of what life satisfaction is all about. And I came across something called the 5 a day for mental health, and that blew my mind. And the 5 a day, which are now the 5 ways to wellbeing, were the idea that we should take note of ourselves and our surroundings and what's happening in the world, that we should take physical exercise, that we should give, that we should learn, and that we should connect to others, and probably the connect to others being the most important. And what I realized is that those 5 ways were the things that I'd unconsciously been doing without knowing it, in trying to sort of promote my own well-being. And that was a big realization. And I thought, okay, when this job came up, I thought, that's the job I want to do. So that's how it happened.
Nice. Thank you for sharing, Roger. And I think that in a lot of ways, we hear this story often from people that are working in the social change sector, and they're really passionate about making a difference in the world, but maybe feel that their own sense of kind of happiness or well-being isn't very high. And so yeah, we've been looking a bit in this webinar series and through our work generally now about how can you kind of help to support others whilst also still caring for yourself. And I think that balance is really important. So yeah, just to say welcome again to anyone that's joining us a bit late. We wanted to talk a bit about why well-being as a frame as well, because I know that you're passionate about kind of campaigning after all of your experience at Friends of the Earth, and that actually some people think of well-being as a very personal issue, but at Network of Wellbeing, we really push beyond that understanding and see it as a kind of wider and potentially even a radical framework for change as well. So I wonder if you could just say a bit about why well-being as a radical framework for change.
It's really complicated, but there's a whole series of ways it's a radical frame. It's the whole series of ways where I get very passionate about it. So do interrupt me if I go on some long divergence or something like that. But I mean, just to take it at its basics, well-being is what really matters in life. It's whether you're happy or not. Nothing else is that important. It doesn't matter whether you've, in my case, in the old days, seen 1,000 different sorts of bird on my holidays, or whether you've got the latest Ferrari or something like that. That doesn't matter. What matters is whether you're happy with yourself, whether you feel your life is satisfied, whether you've got a sense of purpose, all those sorts of things. So it's about measuring what really matters. That's the first thing. The second thing is, what happens when we start to measure what really matters is we discover that a whole load of things that we've been told about the world aren't true. Like, for example, it does not necessarily make you happier, the fact that you've got the latest pair of Nike trainers, or the fact that you've got a better house than somebody else. That doesn't make you happy necessarily. And so actually, if we focus on what does make you happy, we find that a lot of the negative things that people do in the world, whether it be excessive consumption or positional consumption, where they're deliberately buying things because they want to have higher status than other people, these things become slightly less relevant, and in fact, in many cases, completely irrelevant. And that means that we can begin to tackle many of the problems of the world. And from a personal perspective, one of the things that was really influential for me was the idea that if we focused on improving people's well-being, then we don't have to put such a great emphasis on the economy going up and up and up, and us having more and more and more material consumption. And in that way, we can solve some of the world's environmental problems. And so that is a big source of my inspiration and interest in this issue. I didn't say, though, and I will say, Flo, you asked me about the social connections. I think to me, it's self-evident. If you have to step over somebody who's sitting in the street because they're homeless, then your well-being is affected. If the world around you is being trashed, either you're seeing videos of people leaving Syria because their homes have been destroyed, or children being separated from their parents, as it seems to be happening in America now, that is personally distressing for many of us. And so I think one of the things that is important to well-being that we have to recognize is that our well-being does depend on what happens around us. And we can't be truly happy without the world's ills being in a much better state than they are at the moment.
Yeah, thank you for that, Roger. I think it's a really important point. And thank you guys that are joining us on Zoom for all of your comments. It's brilliant to see that what Roger's saying is resonating so much with people. I'm just going to read out briefly a few comments and responses to what you've said, Roger, because Janice has said she's feeling excited as she listens to what you were saying about your experiences and changes and what led you to wellbeing. So yeah, thanks. And Luciana says thanks for sharing. Safi says that she absolutely agrees, and she can't support others unless you know how to look after yourself first. And I think, and Ryan made a joke about other trainers are available other than Nike, which is very true. Yeah, I think that Michelle says the shift needs to move from material prosperity to psycho-social prosperity with the aim of moving away from economic wealth. So I think that there is a lot of key points here about, there's this point about, that economics as it's currently measured doesn't truly represent what makes us happy and well as people. That's not to say that we don't need any material goods, or that we don't need our basic material needs met. I think that's definitely something that's very important. And one thing that economic growth as it's currently measured kind of disguises is inequality, and the fact that some people don't have their material needs, whereas others aren't happy and have an excess. So that it's more about that balance. And I think also this point that you make about kind of the social connection, so that how can we be well when others aren't? To paraphrase a good friend of ours, Duncan, from the Useful and Kind Foundation. So I think that this leads on to the next question, which is how to create a balance between these things, because like we started off by saying, a lot of people that are really passionate about making a change in wider society in campaigning roles or, you know, activist roles, they can have the tendency to push themselves to the point of burnout. And then on the other end of the spectrum, maybe there's people that are very in there, you know, caring for themselves a lot perhaps, but not kind of engaging with the wider world. So obviously that's a caricature of the extremes, but I wonder, there is this kind of question of balance. How can you balance care for your own well-being and care for others and care for the wider natural world as well?
It's a really difficult question, and I think, you know, there's a lot written about it. There's a lot of, you know, you go back to, I remember thinking about this in terms of having a Christian upbringing, the story of Mary Magdalene, you know, buying oil to clean Jesus's feet, and the disciples saying, well, that money is money that could have been spent on the poor. And so this is clearly a debate that's been going on a very long time. Likewise, you know, there are all sorts of things where you think people have destroyed their lives trying to save others. And so I think that, to my mind, don't think we can give a definitive answer of where the balance should be, because it has to be, everybody has to make that balance for themselves. But I think the important thing is really, firstly, to recognize that the balance has to be struck, and that no one is so indispensable that they have to destroy themselves in the cause of saving the rest of humanity, whether it be from climate change or from whatever. The second thing is, I think all this stuff that we hear in the 21st century, in the last decade, about mindfulness, about meditation, about all the different ways of looking at oneself and trying to ask, are we truly happy? Is this what we really want to do? Are actually very healthy for people who are in that activist mindset and that campaigning mindset, because it does make them think periodically, every now and again, we need to think, is this what I want to do? Am I really enjoying this? Should I be doing my life somehow different? And I think that's those very, very important questions that people need to ask themselves fairly often.
Yeah, I think that's a really great and honest answer, because it's not, the balance will be different for everyone, and it's more about saying each of those aspects are important. So don't neglect to look at any of those aspects. You know, it's an ongoing and, like you say, a historical and continuous question of how to get that balance right. And I think that another one of the questions that we wanted to reflect on is, okay, there's all of these different, there's a kind of wider acknowledgement of the importance of well-being now, I think. Of course, it's still not 100% mainstream, but there's a kind of growing movement. And I think one thing at the Network of Wellbeing we were really keen to do is kind of help to support people to connect with each other and to kind of work to building wellbeing together. So rather than, as well as, you know, all of the excellent individual initiatives that are going on, kind of looking over and seeing what else is happening out there. So I wonder if you could maybe share just a bit about how at Now we support building wellbeing together.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, the first thing is, it says it in the name. We're the Network of Wellbeing, and it's about networking, and that's really, you cannot stop connecting. The more we can engage people, the more we learn about it ourselves, the more we can then communicate with others. And we do that principally through a website. And I'm really pleased to say that we're going to have a new website very shortly, people, that you can look at. It's going to be full of case studies and examples of what people are doing on wellbeing. We've sort of opened up our doors and said, anybody who's doing something interesting on wellbeing, write for us, show us what you're doing. We'll put it on the website. Everybody can get a chance to have a look at it. Then we're organising events like the webinars and that you're organising, Flo, which are great, but also face-to-face events. We did a great conference last year called Building Wellbeing Together, about 80 people in Hawkwood College in Gloucestershire, which was really lovely, over a weekend. And we've done a whole series of other events and we've got more planning. planning that we're doing to try and get events up and down the country, to try and bring people together who care about well-being, both to learn about it, but also to meet each other and to recognize that they're part of a growing movement. And I think it's very important for people to recognize that they're not alone. And that's also true in answer to your earlier question, Flo, about the balance is struck. Recognizing that there are lots and lots of other people, millions of people around the world who care about the human race, who care about the planet, and we're all working together to try and make it a better place. I think that's a really important thing to remember in the face of the overwhelming news agenda that says things are getting worse and things are getting terrible and there's all the bad things that are happening. So we're trying to build well-being together by getting people to talk to each other. Also, I'd say the other thing which we do it with a few projects of our own. We've got a project in Totnes that I'm particularly fond of, something called the Share Shed, which is like a library, but instead of borrowing books, you're borrowing tools. In fact, funny enough, and I probably shouldn't do this, but if I turn it round, you can see all the tools there that we've got for the Share Shed, because the Share Shed needed an office, and we thought, well, okay, we'll make our office available for it. And so we're running that. And every Saturday, people come in and they borrow things they haven't got, and then they use them, and that produces connection. We run a monthly community potluck supper where people bring food and they share food to eat together. So all these sorts of little initiatives that you can do locally in your community are all really important for well-being. Finally, though, I think, and this is the big one we have to remember, is that we have as a society, we have a mechanism for doing things en masse, for doing things as a people, or doing things as millions of people. And that's called politics. And there's a political dimension to this, whereby we're beginning to influence politicians and say, look, measure what matters, look at what is really good for well-being, don't focus on those other things, and then trying to say what sort of policies are important to actually boosting people's well-being in the communities around the United Kingdom.
Yeah, thank you, Roger. And I think, again, it's about like those different layers of engagement, like the things that you can do kind of locally, the ways that, in your community level, like sharing, connecting, the things that we can do kind of more widely nationally in terms of connecting with each other, finding out what else is going on, supporting each other, and then in the political frame. And I think we've had some really exciting kind of guests on the webinars before, like for example Liz Zeidler from Happy City are doing amazing work looking at, okay, if we're not going to use gross domestic product as a measurement of our success, then what are we going to use, and really putting the political pressure on to and sharing alternative wellbeing measurements. So I'd recommend checking out their work. So I'm just going to bring in again you guys and your comments, because I see some amazing discussion going on in the chat box, and it's really brilliant to have such active people joining us on Zoom this evening. Thanks again, guys, for joining us. So I think that some of the points you were making before, Roger, about the balance between the different layers was kind of in a way resonating with people. People have made some interesting points about that. Michelle has said a good starting point is to realize that by placing your own well-being at the heart of the work you do, you will be better placed to take care of the well-being of the other people and planet. If we are better at optimum wellness and functioning, then we are better placed to create positive change. So yeah, I think that's a really good point, Michelle, thank you. And Ryan says you've talked a lot about framing. Common Cause and PIRC work a lot with values and frames. Their values map, interestingly, personal security, health, family security is opposite to values of universalism, including inner harmony, protecting the environment. Okay, so it's very hard for those opposing set of values to be enabled in individuals at the same time. Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, we've seen the work of Common Cause, and they're doing some really brilliant stuff as well. So thank you for bringing that aspect into the discussion. Safi has said, have you seen the Network Weaving Handbook?
I would love
Yeah, and you've included a link there, Safi. I haven't seen that. Have you, Roger?
No, I've not seen it. It sounds great. Is it about weaving or is it about networking? It sounds like it's about both, and either would be interesting.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. It's about networking. Thank you, Safi. So that's a really useful link to have. And Janice has said, oh, Ben said that was a great event last year at Hawkwood. You know, just for your guys' diaries, we will run that event next year in September in Hawkwood again. So we can send around a kind of save the date in the follow-up email if you'd like. Janice says she'd like to take part in an event such as this one in the Southeast. She likes a sense of community and interdependentness. I think that's really what a lot of people need, because like you say, Roger, you can feel a bit hopeless or helpless when the barrage of negativity from the kind of mainstream media hits you, and it's really important to kind of support each other in the different initiatives that we're working on. And Ben Ward says, very interested in the idea of lobbying government and should be a key role for now, bringing a collective voice to the issues of well-being and key recommendations.
Very interesting.
Thanks, Ben. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very valuable comment. So I think that, yeah, that's all really brilliant comments. And actually, we wanted to approach the remainder of the time we have together in a very interactive way, in terms of asking you guys if you've got any questions for Roger. In which case, feel free to put them in the Q&A box and we will get to the questions. But also, we'd also really love to hear from you guys about what projects you're working on in relation to wellbeing, and also what further things do you think the Network of Wellbeing can do, we can do generally to kind of really enrich and support this collective feeling of building wellbeing together, and this sense that we're working in support of each other. So we're going to move on to that section of the discussion now. But first, actually, what we thought is we could just take just a short mindful pause, just to kind of reflect on the information that Roger has shared so far and the discussion, all of your amazing comments that have been shared so far. So just for a minute or so, I'm just gonna guide a very short mindful pause, just so that we've got the space to go into the next section of our discussion. So maybe just check in with your body, how you're sitting at the moment in front of your screen. And if you would like to, just like roll your shoulders a few times just to check if you're feeling comfortable in your body. Stretch if you'd like. And if it feels comfortable for you to do so, you can just gently close your eyes and just tune in with your breath. Just notice how your breath is flowing in and flowing out of your body. And there's no need to make any change to your breath, but just taking that moment to notice. Maybe noticing the point of your body where it's coming in, where it's flowing out. Perhaps noticing the feeling of the air flowing into your lungs, flowing out of your body again. And just knowing with each breath you're receiving nourishment of the oxygen flowing all around your body. And with each out breath you can just let go and relax a little bit. And just notice how you feel, how maybe this discussion has impacted upon you so far. Any points you're excited to raise. Any feelings that have arisen. And then just gently bring yourself back into the room and gently open your eyes again if your eyes were closed. And yeah, come back into this discussion. Thank you guys for taking that mindful pause with us. So yeah, I would really love to hear if anyone has any projects they would like to share in the comments. Well, first of all, any questions for Roger, of course, but any projects you'd like to share or any suggestions in relation to this concept of building wellbeing together. And to kind of get us started on this discussion, I'm actually going to invite one of the lovely participants to join us in the discussion. I'm going to invite Lisa, who has joined all of our previous webinars actually, and she's working on a wellbeing related project. So I'm just going to invite Lisa to join the discussion as a panelist. And then Lisa's going to share a little bit about what she does in relation to wellbeing and her ideas on this Building Wellbeing Together. So yeah, hi Lisa.
Hi.
Hopefully we can, I don't know if we can hear you yet, but we can definitely see you. So we're halfway there.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, perfect.
I just took my speaker out.
So lovely to see you, Lisa, and thank you so much for joining us.
No problem.
So Lisa and I have actually met through the webinars because I think you've been tuning in regularly since we started this series. Is that right, Lisa?
It is, yeah. Yeah, it's been really helpful, yeah.
Brilliant. So we just wanted to ask really, yeah, just if you wouldn't mind sharing very briefly the work that you're doing on wellbeing.
Yeah, okay, so I'm based in Leicester and currently running a voluntary community social enterprise, delivering arts for health and wellbeing for people in my local community and beyond. I've worked on a number of projects since I got made redundant from work. I was a trained nurse originally and then worked in academic research and the Children's Cancer Network, was made redundant, and this is the reason I came to this was my son was diagnosed with autism, and I decided to carve something, a career for myself, so I could be available around my children whilst they were growing up and needing my support. So I started by running workshops in a local cafe. They didn't have an awful lot of footfall, so we managed to get people to come in. I taught them to crochet, and within a very short space of time I could see the link between people being creative and improving their health and well-being. So I applied for a mentoring programme through Creative Leicestershire, and with the funding from that I got a mentor and also some funding to go to the first Culture, Health and Wellbeing conference in Bristol. And the resounding message that I got when I left there was that we know this works, but we have to prove it. So I went away and joined with another organisation, did a project called Arts on Prescription in a local GP practice, and the results were astonishing. And from that I've built my own little organisation and continue to qualitatively measure outcomes for people who come along to my sessions, and hopefully, I mean, we've got quite a few on our waiting list at the minute, so we're on a big fundraising drive in order for us to be able to reach more people, but it's getting, you know, more and more popular as we become more and more visible in our community.
Yeah, that's so brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing, Lisa. And Ryan says it's good to hear about a project in the Midlands. And Safi says hello. So yeah, no, it's really inspiring because, and like you say, that you started off with this kind of personal journey and experience, and then you took that to looking at, okay, how can I help others? And then at first, you know, it wasn't, you know, there weren't so many people coming to the workshops, and now it's, you know, massively grown in popularity. I think it's a really inspiring story, and it's also a resonant story with people, that, you know, this kind of that sense of from the personal growing out into the community. And Morella says, that sounds amazing, Lisa. Well done for the great work. Has your organisation got a website? And Ben says, yes, great work. So I think what we can do is send Lisa's website around in the follow-up email, if that's okay with you, Lisa, so that people can always check out more about your work if you'd like. So yeah, we love, I mean, at the Network of Wellbeing, we get really enthusiastic hearing about projects like Lisa's, and we're really keen to, like Roger mentioned earlier, share kind of case studies and examples of people doing this. And Lisa's kindly agreed to contribute, I guess, blog posts to our website later in the summer about her work. But Lisa, are there, kind of reflecting on joining the webinars and being a little bit involved in the Network of Wellbeing, are there things that you think we could do, or we could do as a collective movement, to kind of work more towards building wellbeing together?
Yeah, I find it's quite lonely doing the work I do, and I occasionally come together with people, but a lot of the time ideas are churning around in my head and there's nobody. This is my little office here, it's a shed in the garden essentially, but there's no one to share the ideas with. So when I was thinking about talking this evening, I thought it'd be really nice to have sort of local network for wellbeing groups, so we can come together either through sort of in between webinars or physically face to face. You know, we all know that isolation isn't very good for us, and though I run my groups, there are times even within the group I can feel isolated because I'm leading it, and I think it'd be really great to sort of have time for reflection with others who are doing similar work. The other thing is that funding is a big thing. I'm not a profit making organisation, but I do need to have money to live on, and I find that I'm quite quiet and I don't put myself forward, and yet other organisations are a little bit more able to do that. I have a hidden disability, so I find it extremely hard to raise my head above the pulpit as such. So I think it'd be really great if groups like myself who have a social ethos come collectively and maybe set up fundraising groups together. I don't know if it would work, but yeah, something that I think I would definitely need help and support with going forward in the organisation.
And thank you so much for sharing those suggestions, Lisa. And I see that it's like really resonating with people on the comments that Ben has said that he agrees that it can be quite lonely running your own community project, which ironically, because of course you're doing so much to try and support the well-being of others, and yet, of course you need to kind of then nourish your own kind of community connections as well. And he also agrees, yes, sharing successful funding bids could be a good idea. Michelle says, Lisa, this is why Michelle is setting up SWAP, supporting women of purpose for women like you, so please message me. So actually I know Michelle well, so I can put you guys directly in touch after the webinar, because I think that you guys would have lots to talk about. So I think this is it's really brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing a bit of your story, Lisa, because this is exactly the kind of thing that we love to see, connections being made between people. So I'm going to we're going to wave goodbye to Lisa now.
Bye. Thank you.
Okay, but you'll still be on the webinar, of course, Lisa. Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much again, Lisa. And I see you guys are sharing actively in the comments a bit of your stories. So I'm just going to read a few of those out, and then maybe we'll welcome another guest as well. So Samantha says she started a company recently, Health and Wellbeing Community Scheme, KIC. And Samantha's included the web link there. We obtain grants to do community projects. For example, community orchards offer complimentary healthcare, forest walks for children that are less abled, etc. That sounds amazing, Samantha. And by the way, if anyone would like me to share links to your project, just drop me an email, Florence at Network of Wellbeing, after the webinar, at anyone joining us on Zoom, and I can send around in the follow-up Zoom email. Michelle has said she's going around the UK to 11 cities being supported by the RSA, offering a free workshop in each called Simply Women of Purpose. Of course, it's Simply Women on Purpose, not that's the acronym for SWAP, which is the start of a new network for women who are involved in social change or would like to be, or who are interested in meeting other women involved in living a purposeful life. And I just say, Michelle, we know her well and she's doing really amazing work. And again, we can include the follow-up links in the email for those that are really keen to find out more about SWAP. Michelle also says she's one of the network guardians of a new health and wellbeing network being established by the RSA, and she's keen to have now involved. One more conversation for us to have, Roger and Flo, definitely. Very happy to have that conversation. And then I'm just going to read through a few more of your guys' contributions. Janice says she's a humanistic therapist, so she understands both personally and professionally loneliness. She has recently practiced within a rehab in Thailand, and the one thing she noticed was how well-being was raised through the way different elements came together. So I think that's a really important point, Janice, and that's something that we're trying to draw on. That well-being isn't just this one thing. It's about the different aspects of our lives coming together and how we create a good balance between them. So thank you for sharing your experience. And Nicola has said, my project is AdBlock Bristol, a campaign for happier, healthier city, free from the pressures of corporate outdoor advertising. Sounds brilliant. Like we've said, this pressure to kind of consume and the idea that that's what's going to make you happy is something that is actually really damaging and detrimental to our well-being. So I think that that sounds like a really valuable campaign, Nicola. And you say you're doing a number of things, including talking to the council and talking to people about how public space should be used instead of for benefit of communities, so rather than for advertising. Really, please keep us updated on this project, because I think it's a really amazing idea and I really hope it takes off. Bristol is one of those amazing places where there's a lot going on and a kind of flourishing city, so hopefully the council will be open to it. Ben says Michelle might be interested in Rising Women, Rising World organisation. Yeah, Michelle's already on that, unsurprisingly, because Michelle's very connected. But that's, yeah, I think that's a great tip, Ben, thank you. And Ryan says, I wish the government would create funds to support wellbeing and climate change projects. Yeah, they help towards the Sustainable Development Goals. Ecoleads are doing lobbying and representation work on a European level. Organisations can join. Okay, great. Yeah, thank you for the tip, Ryan. That's really helpful. I've heard of Ecoleads before and I think they're doing some good work. Now we're going to welcome one more of our lovely audience members to share a bit of their story, if that's okay. So this is, we're going to now welcome Ben Ward to share a bit of the work that he does at World Jungle. So hopefully, I see that you're there, Ben, and hopefully you will be able to unmute yourself, or I can unmute you. Yeah, brilliant. Hi, Ben.
Hello. Hi.
How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for bringing me in.
Yeah, no worries. It's lovely to see you, and yeah, lovely to have you as part of the discussion. So yeah, I guess we're just going to ask you a few of the questions we spoke with Lisa about as well. It would be lovely to hear a little bit more about the work you do in wellbeing, first of all.
Okay, well, a bit like Lisa, set up my own social enterprise about 10 years ago with my wife called World Jungle, which was focused initially around trying to bring different cultures together and focus on breaking down barriers between different cultures. And then over the years, sort of partly related to funding pressures and just going for different pots of funding, it kind of developed into a whole range of different community initiatives. So now we run a lot of youth and play programs. We've always felt that children's play was really important to community, and always try and find that's a brilliant way of getting people connected. So we do a lot of events, especially during the summer holidays, in local parks for children, which get hopefully the mums and dads out as well and talking. So we run a sort of community play program mainly during the holidays. We also have a community building program that we work with a major inclusion charity in Gloucestershire called Barnwood Trust, trying to promote a kind of what they call asset-based community development. So really trying to focus on what's strong in the community rather than what's wrong. And that's something that we've been doing for the last couple of years, which has kind of changed how we've worked a bit from where we used to come up with a lot of the ideas ourselves and deliver them. And the projects would be successful for the duration of the funding, but then would just end.
Yeah.
And so now we've kind of very much focused around trying to work with people who are passionate about something and want to get something started themselves in the community.
Yeah.
And this has led to kind of various initiatives in our local area, from sort of board game clubs to a local DJ collective. So people just coming and playing their records for 30 minutes. And that's just spiraled into sort of 60, 70 people playing at this one sort of old social club in Dursley. And you know, once a month, we know there's going to be a good party that lots of people get together, and you got all kinds of music from different styles and different ages. And that's been a really good way of bringing a lot of people together. And I'd say quite a few of them were lonely or had mental health issues as well. It's quite an easy thing to get into, is music and just sitting in your room and playing your music. So it's nice to bring people out. And of course it supports a local venue in the town as well. So that's been good. And then we run health and fitness classes as well in our local area, from yoga, Pilates and dance. We've done these type of initiatives for a while now. But we've got a new exciting project, which is developing a retreat program in northeast Scotland, up in Aberdeenshire. So we've got access to a beautiful 10-bedroom house up there that we're just looking to launch programs in September, which are around well-being, but also looking not just at individual well-being, but how that can spiral into wider well-being and making a positive difference in the world. And we're just sort of putting together our programs at the moment and hoping to advertise that shortly. So that
sounds amazing, Ben.
We should talk about that, Ben, not least because we've also got a retreat centre that we've recently been gifted, and we're looking to do very, very similar sorts of things down in Devon, so we could have one on either end of the country.
Yeah, fantastic. That would be brilliant. Yeah. That would be brilliant. Well, I'd be really interested on people's ideas as well on I don't know, activities or things that have made a difference that they've attended, on workshops that were really powerful and made a difference to them, just to make sure we can put together a program that's really makes a big impact. So if people have got any suggestions around that, I'd love to hear them.
Great. And there's a few comments being shared whilst you're talking, Ben. Janice has said that she loves the ABCD approach, focusing on what's strong in the community rather than what's wrong. I think that is a really powerful approach, and it's really inspiring to go where the energy is in that way in community work. So thank you for sharing that. And Safi has said, sounds fab, Ben. Have you heard about participatory city? Lots of research about people participating and how to help people be more involved in their community, which of course helps well-being. Our colleague actually, Morella, recently flagged up that project, and it looks like a really great project to check out, participatory city. So, and Kathy also says, wow, retreats, yes. I think we all feel like that about retreats, Safi. So definitely, and of course, I think it's really powerful if we can maintain this awareness of the connection between the inner and outer change in running retreats. So it will be great to talk to you more about that, Ben. And Michelle says, Ben, I ran a retreat last autumn at Dartington for 16 women change makers. Happy to chat. I'm in Gloucestershire and think we may know some of the same people.
Oh, fantastic. Great.
So there you go. I'm happy to put you guys in touch afterwards as well. And Lisa says, love the idea of a retreat, maybe something that my group would enjoy, maybe mini retreat days where we could connect would be good. I think this is a nice idea, you know, like was mentioned earlier about this kind of in-person, face-to-face connection is also really valuable. So like we mentioned, we ran this weekend event last year, and we want to do the same next year. And also maybe because we've been gifted this retreat centre in Devon, looking at kind of what other ways can we offer to bring communities, groups together in this way and support the work that's going on. Ben, did you have any other ideas to add about, you know, network building or building wellbeing together, things you've enjoyed or things you'd love to see more of?
I mean, I made the comment about the lobbying. I mean, I used to work for a children's charity, National Children's Bureau, and they are very good at sort of bringing collectives together to campaign on particular issues. And we were at the time campaigning on children's play and trying to make public space more child friendly. And I just think the way they approached it by building a collective of different organizations. I know you guys collect a lot of research data, so you've got a lot of that information to hand to make the message really powerful. But they're quite experienced at taking collective voices together and then having a clear kind of way of trying to influence politics and politicians. And that's essentially, you know, how we're going to make real change is as well at grassroots. You know, you want to work on both ends, but I do think, you know, we certainly saw within the play sector, you know, suddenly hundreds of millions of pounds coming in to develop new play areas and play projects, which without that government support, we'd never have achieved the changes.
Yeah.
Of course, as soon as the banking collapse happened, we lost it all. But it was nice for a while. But no, so I mean that would be something with you guys in your position. I would think it'd be a good way to focus.
Yeah, no,
talk about,
it's a really great suggestion, and thanks so much for, you know, because we've, you know, been in touch for a few years in different ways, and it was really great to have you last year at our weekend, and now to reconnect. So.
And I just want to say, sorry, I did try to get we were talking about trying to attend a few festivals, you know, so having a kind of community wellbeing focus at the festival. We were hoping, because we're involved in WOMAD Festival in Malmesbury. Well, I did try, but it didn't happen for this year. But
maybe next year.
Maybe next year.
We're thinking very similar, because we're going to be at I can't remember the name. There's a sunrise celebration in Herefordshire later in the year, and I've got a contact who, funny enough, helps to organise the Greenfields at Glastonbury, and that is something that we're trying slowly but surely to try and get some wellbeing presence at some festivals as well. It'd be great.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Ben, for joining us. And like with Lisa, I can send around the link to Well Jungle for people that want to find out more about Ben's work and all of the stuff he's up to. So thanks. I'll change you back to an attendee now. Brilliant. Well, it's been so lovely to hear from some of you guys in the comments and, you know, on the video. And Michelle says she's also talking wellbeing to festivals next year. Brilliant. It sounds like something we should work together on. And I think, were there any other kind of comments or questions that people wanted to share? I did notice one question from Lisa for Roger. How do you engage with local parish councils who fail to consult or listen to the local community?
I'm no expert on this, but I know people who are, and there are at least two people who worth looking at, two cases worth looking at, Lisa. One is Frome, which is a town council where local people decided they weren't happy with the way the town council was doing things, like community activists, and they decided to stand as councillors, as independents themselves. And surprise, surprise, they won. And they're now in control of the council. The other is Buckfastleigh, very near us, 4 miles down the road from Totnes, where a very similar approach was tried by somebody called Pam Barrett, and she stood as the local mayor, got control of the council and is now doing all sorts of interesting things. So I think, you know, we have to look at these institutions not just as potentially as people we engage with, but actually, why not stand? Why not have a go and see if we can run them ourselves? But that's the best examples I could think of.
Yeah, no, they are inspiring examples to take a look at for sure. So I think we're going to move towards drawing to a close. We did have a few announcements we'd like to share with you guys in terms of upcoming activities to get involved with. One is, of course, these webinars at the moment are monthly, and next month in July, on the 31st of July, on a Tuesday evening, we're going to have the Carnegie UK Trust talking about the place of kindness, so the importance of looking at kindness as a valuable framework for change and in our community work and in kind of wider policy work as well. So I think that will be a really interesting discussion. And also we will send around the recording of this discussion, and it will be available on Facebook. Thank you to those that have joined us on Facebook. And I will stop the recording and the Facebook now. So bye to all those people, and thanks for watching.